All right, so let's talk about the backend. So, when you start creating an app, you focus on the front end, right? The front end is essentially what you get in the web browser: text, colors, images, animations. We'll run a workshop about animations shortly, by the way. Videos, music, all the sort of things that run in a web browser. But you know that sometimes the web browser is not enough to handle all your problems. The browser is not strong enough to deal with things like security. Browser is a weak working environment. If you install an extension, if you install a new module with Node, your whole content can be accessed. Yeah, so you don't want to run some sort of operations. You don't want to delegate. You don't want to rely on the browser to run some sort of operations. That's why you got the backend. Yeah, so probably every web application runs in two environments. Runs in the front end and runs in the backend. Yeah? At least when they achieve some level of complexity. Probably to build your portfolio, you don't need any backend, because on your portfolio you don't care about APIs, speaking, you don't care about security, passwords, you don't care about these things on your portfolio, right? But as soon as you start building some complexity, you really need a backend. So today I would like to explain how to set up a backend server. Then this afternoon I would like to present how to integrate that backend with the front end. So long story short, we are going to run two servers. This morning I will focus on the backend server, and this afternoon I will analyze how to sync, how to run both front end and backend in parallel. This is, by the way, related to task number 18 to 24. Yeah, that range of tasks is pretty much what we're going to summarize today. All right, so first things first. So I got my folder structure. So this is an empty app created with Create React App. So what I've done so far, the only thing I've done is creating two folders. I called it a folder. You can see the screen. Thank you. Sorry guys, I'm not presenting anything. Yes, that's right. That's my fault. So let me share my entire desktop. It's gonna look a bit weird, very very wide probably, but it will look much better on YouTube later on. Yeah. So I hope now you can see I'm changing between my web browser and my VS Code, right? Hello? Okay, cool. All right, fantastic. Thank you guys. Sorry about that. So you see I created two folders, backend and frontend. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move some resources to the front end, and I'm going to create some resources on the back end. That's the very first step when I create a new app. Why? Because if I got my front end and my back end perfectly separated, that will simplify things a bit in the future. Yeah. Eventually, if your app grows enough, you may want to create two repositories on GitHub. So for instance, if you're creating an application called Codeflix, so you could create Codeflix frontend and Codeflix backend. So separating your apps, your servers, will help from a scalability point of view. Mind that you start hiring developers. So you may assign some developers to the backend team and some developers to the frontend team, and they could work separately, individually somehow. Okay? So I think it's important to prepare your application for the future. So you see I created two folders, front and back, and now I'm going to move my components. I got a single component, right, which is app.js. So I'm going to move it into the frontend folder. So I select the app.css, app.js, and app.test. We'll talk about testing later on in this course. But for now, I'm going to move these resources to the frontend folder. Yeah? And now, do you think, guys, if I start the server, if I start the frontend server, because that's all I have so far, do you think this is going to work or not? Why not, Maxim? That's correct. Guys, whenever you move files, whenever you refactor your folder structure, you are gonna break your system, yeah, because the references to these files have changed. So it is important to make sure that you update them. And the thing is, who is referring, for instance, to app.css? This is happening from app.javascript, which is okay, because as I've moved both files alongside, you see, in relative terms, they're still in the same folder. So the main issue here is with app.javascript. Who is referring? Does anyone know who is the responsible to load, to refer to that app.js file? Index.js. That's perfect, guys. That's correct. You see? Yeah. I'm pretty sure there is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So the majority of the code editors, they have a mechanism to dynamically detect when you move a file and then to refactor the folder structure. Yeah. I know some editors, they do that out of the box. I don't think this code runs that operation by default. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, but I'm pretty sure there is a plugin, an extension to do that for us. Yeah, I don't know it. I'm 95% just based on my gut feeling that thing already exists. Yeah. All right. So yeah, we need to change the reference to the app.js, which is front end, and then this is going to be app. Yeah. And once you do that, I think it's healthy to start the server just to make sure everything goes fine before moving to the next step. Yeah. So you see that's starting the server. I just want to make sure that renders something. Once it works, I will start thinking about the backend. Yeah. By the way, guys, there is some background noise coming from some of you, so please make sure you either you mute yourself or you try to mute that noise. All right, cool. Thank you very much. And you see, guys, that now the sorry, guys, I need to check who is making that noise because that's a bit strange. Yeah, don't know where is it coming from, but you see that now the front end is working, and that's all I wanted so far, right? I just wanted to to make sure that I didn't break my app. So once I know my app is working, then I can start talking about the backend. So how do we set up the backend? There are different ways of dealing with the backend. I'll show you what is probably my favorite one. So first of all, I'm gonna stop the server, with Control-C or just Bing that terminal. You stop everything. And now on my backend, I'm going to create a new file called app.js in lowercase. You can hopefully start, discovering the similarities between frontend and backend. In the frontend, I got an entry file called app.js. It starts with capital A, but just because that's a React component. In the backend, I got something quite similar, app.js. So if I want to do something on the backend, my root file, my entry file will be app.js. If I want to do something in the front end, my entry file, my root file will be app.js. Yeah? So I'm trying to establish some similarities between front end and backend. So now, when talking about the backend in this particular case will be mostly about routing, backend routing. So in the front end, we already have routing. In the front end, you said if I go to slash contact, I show something. If I go to /projects, I show something. If I go to Slack about me, I show something. That's front-end routing. But then the backend has also routing. Yeah? It's a different type of routing, but it is also called routing. So today I would like to set up the backend routing. And the backend routing will be mostly about APIs. Yeah? I want to create some routes, some API routes. So for instance, if I go to /cats, I will display a list of cats. If I go to /docs, I will display a list of docs. Okay? That's some sort of routing, because depending on which endpoint, which API you want to consume, your backend will redirect, will present a different content to the user. So that's what I would like to do today in the next two sessions. So how do I set up routing? So let me present you a tool that is some sort of de facto standard. So that tool is called Express.js. So Express is what we call a middleware to set up routes for Node. It's quite easy to set up. It's very easy to deal with. You just need to assume few conventions. Once you get used to these conventions, it's going to be a piece of cake. So first things first, let's install it. You see, guys, that's the way you can install a new package, a new plugin. Actually, you know that already because you have installed at least one package. Can you tell me, guys, some packages that you have installed in your application so far? That's correct, React Rotterdam. That was a good example. And the way we installed it was pretty much the same thing. Yeah. So the style is the same. It doesn't matter if I want to install a new package for the front end or for the backend. The style, the installation process is the same, which is great because that simplifies the setup journey. All right, so I'm just gonna paste that line. Can anyone tell me what that save line means? That's correct, guys. That's correct. So that's gonna add that component express into my dependencies section, and that means that if I change my laptop, I clone my repo just by typing npm install, it will automatically install all my dependencies, which is convenient. Otherwise, you will have to remember, oh, which components, which plugins my project had, and you will have to install them manually again. Right? That's not going to scale, obviously. So thanks to that, that's the save. So that component express is going to be listed here, as you're going to see in a minute. By the way, historically speaking, that flag was optional. I mean, if you introduce it, the package will be saved here. If you ignore it, the package won't be saved here. I'm pretty sure Node has changed that recently. So, in other words, by default, I don't need to type that's the save. If I do npm install express, I believe this is gonna add, we'll see in a minute, this is gonna add the express package here in my dependencies block. We'll see that in a minute. In the meanwhile, what's next? Well, I'm gonna show you, once you install it, what's next. So you don't need to remember these steps, just go to the getting started menu and then select hello world, because it presents you some sort of very simplistic server. So you can, if you want, copy and paste it, yeah, and that will give you, like, you know, the first idea about how to set up a server with Node and Express. Let me add some semicolons, because the snippet comes without semicolons, and I know I'm a big fan of semicolons. And let's paste that, yeah. So look, line number 5 is to me the most important one. So what it says is, whenever the user lands on slash, then we are gonna present that message, hello world, to the user. Yeah? That's the idea. Look at the syntax, guys, because that's vital. You need to get used to the syntax. App.get, that's a function. You see the parentheses, that's a function. So the first argument of the function is, all right, so what are we waiting for? So whenever the user lands on slash, then we are going to call a callback function. This is like the onClick in React, yeah? And that callback function receives 2 arguments. Can anyone tell me what that REQ argument means? Require. No, that's not require. Request. That's correct, guys. Request. That's it. That is an object. That's a JavaScript object containing all the information facilitated by the user. I don't know, cookies, query params, passwords, whatever. Yeah, that's information about the user. And then RES. Can anyone tell me what response? That's correct. Look, that's quite interesting actually. So we got two arguments. First of all, what the user has told us, and then what do we want to send him or her back? Yeah, input, output, input, output, and response is an object, and that object has many properties. The most important one so far is the one that is sent. So that's the message the user is gonna receive when we land on slash. Remember, guys, that's just about the backend server. Let's do something. Let's run the backend server. Does anyone know how can I start the backend server? Yeah. And then Node. What do you think, guys? Max is not happy. Guys, that's correct, Elena. It's on the other way around, Max. It's Node, and then you specify the path to the file, yeah? So, let me do something. I got some applications running in my local computer. That means that port, 3000 is probably busy. We'll see what happens if I run the app. You see? No, actually that's throwing a new error. Can anyone tell me why this error is being thrown? Look, guys, whenever you got that problem, cannot find module, that means the path is wrong, for sure. That path is wrong. The path is wrong because what are we missing, guys? src, Lauren, that's correct. You see, we're missing the src. So let's try again, src, and then, oh, cool, it's working. That's interesting. Not sure if that should work. I believe I'm running another app on that port. I don't know. Let's do something, guys. Let's go to localhost 3000. Actually, it works. That's surprising. You see, that's the way it works, guys. When I go to slash, it displays hello world. So, for instance, what happens if I change the hello world to hello Codery? So, if I refresh the page, will it display hello Codery? All right. Interesting. Let's try it. No, you're wrong. I'm trying. I promise. I'm doing my best. It doesn't work. Why? I don't necessarily agree on that. No, I think the answer is much easier. Look, so we got two things. We got the front end and the back end. Now we're ignoring the front end. But historically speaking, from the first day of the bootcamp, you've been working with the front end. Yeah. It is true, guys, that now where the big money is in the front end. Yeah, and that means that there are way more resources. Companies have more interest in developing the front end and the back end. Don't underestimate the back end, however. Yeah, because there is more people working here than there, and that means that if you like the back end, you will have plenty of opportunities. We have a case of a student from Codery that she duplicated her salary in 6 months. Yeah, because she wanted to work in the backend. So backend developers are on demand, definitely. But the thing is, 80% of the industry is talking about the front end, and that means that there are more resources and more development. So the front end is evolving faster than the backend. Yeah. So, excuse me. So what are the consequences? So you are used to many things in the development journey that you assume they were true. However, when talking about the backend, they are not that true. One of the things is hot reload. So in the front end, when you change something in your React application, you don't even have to refresh the web browser, right? You don't even have to refresh the web browser. But if something doesn't work because of whatever reason, you refresh the browser and then it works. With the backend, that's not the case. Once you start the server, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do, guys. Unfortunately, if I keep changing my stuff, my backend, it's not gonna work, and that's a bit unfortunate. Because how can I get my changes? Look, I had to kill my backend, and I had to start it again. So then, if I go to my web browser, now it works. But you get the problem, right? That's a bit exhausting. Do I need to start my server every time I change something? Well, sorry. That's the historical way we've been working with Node. However, because that's not very convenient, I'm going to show you something. There is another package, another plugin that automatically reloads the server whenever something changes. That package, correct, as Vicky mentioned, is called NodeMon. Yeah. So NodeMon, it's a very popular package. I've been using it for 6 years now, and it's quite good. It's really good. Guys, whenever you install a backend, first thing you need to do is to install that, because that will increase your productivity massively. Yeah. Look at the process. npm I is a shortcut for install, so you can use it from now on. npm I NodeMon. It doesn't add any data save or anything like that. Yeah. You see, Express got saved here. So now let me type npm install NodeMon, and then hopefully we'll get the NodeMon package installed. In the meantime, so you've seen that I've been typing. What is that? npm run node run src backend app.js. That's the way you can start the server. Yeah. However, that's not the but that's not the typical way of running the backend. Why? Well, how do you start the front end? Just you type npm start, something like that, right? Or npm run start dev or start local. That's the way you start your frontend. So why that works? Because if you pay attention to package.json, you see how package.json is becoming more and more important over time. You see there is an important block called scripts. So in the scripts section, you can define your tasks. So look, the task on line number 15, what server is that starting, guys? The front end. That's correct, Elena. That's the original server we started on the first day of the bootcamp, and that started front end. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to rename it to start front end. So unsurprisingly, I'm going to create a new task called start backend. You see, guys, that's all about readability, predictability. I got one task to start my front end. I got another task to start my backend. We'll see how to combine them later on. Yeah, but for now, I want to be able to deal with both servers individually, separately. So here, I'm just going to type my task node, src, the same thing, right? Frontend app.js. I think it was something like that. Backend. Sorry. Thank you, Vicky. Of course, not frontend, right? Backend. Brilliant. src backend app.js. Yeah? That's what I want to do. All right. So what's nodemon? All right. So I'll show you what that means in a minute. So we got an error with nodemon. Yeah, I'll go through it in a minute. Before looking at the error, let's first of all start the backend to see if it works, right? So I'm going to run again npm run start backend. Yeah. That's easier because I don't need to remember the path, the location of my entry file. Yeah, npm run start backend. Look, that looks promising. Yeah, so I got my server running. So if I go back to my web browser, I got my no, that's not the right one. Localhost 3000. Hello, yeah, hello Monday. Still, I still have the issue about not refreshing my changes. So for instance, if I get rid of the exclamation marks, the exclamation marks remain. Yeah, that's because I'm not using nodemon yet. But at least I hope you see the advantage of creating a new task. Yeah, that's, guys, the API of your application, if you like that. If you collaborate with a new colleague, he or she should be able to understand the commands that can be run in your application by looking at the scripts block of your package.json. Any questions so far? You can ignore that. You don't have that. You don't have that. But the thing is, you know that Node by default starts everything on port 3000. You can have only one application running on port 3000. What that means? I got 3 or 4 applications running locally. I got CodeFlix, I got Codedy. I got several applications running locally. Every application needs to use a different port. Yeah. So if you do that, that's a way to change the port of your frontend. So this is not gonna fail. So this is not gonna ask me, hey, the port is busy. Are you sure you don't want to use a different one? Yeah. So you can do that if you want to rename the port that your front-end application uses. Yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? No? All right. Back to nodemon. Look, I tried to install nodemon, but look. Cannot read properly, match of undefined. That's weird. That's really weird. So I'll tell you something. This thing happen from time to time. npm install. That should just work, guys. This is a black box. I cannot fail unless I introduce the name incorrectly. That's I'm not doing. I'm delegating all the control to Node. Why is that command failing? That happened, guys. This is one of the issues working with the Node. Sometimes packages fail to install, and I'm not going to explain why. I'm going to tell you how to solve the problem, however. So if you got that sort of weird problem, like something obvious should work and it doesn't, the very first thing you should do is to delete package.log.json. You see? Package.log.json. Be careful, guys. Don't delete package.json. Vicky. Just delete package.log.json. It's a different file, yeah? So, well, the thing is, when you install a package, package A, in reality, so let me rephrase that. Your app has package A, B, and C. Yeah? But in reality, when you install package A has D, E, and B. And B has X, Y, Z, R, and E. And C has B, D, E, F. Yeah? And actually, to be more precise, D has P, O, U. Yeah? And P has M. And M has B. You see, at the end of the day, we have a big tree of dependencies. And that means that it is sometimes challenging to synchronize them all. So for instance, when I install A, it will install D, and then it will install P, and then it will install M, or in the other way around, doesn't matter. But you need to satisfy all the dependencies. And eventually it will install B. But what happened? Probably B was already installed by us. So there is some sort of caching mechanism. So if B was installed, what's the point of installing it again? So for performance reason, Node tries to optimize the installation process. However, that process doesn't always work well. And that's because sometimes it goes crazy. Yeah? And that's why you cannot, sometimes, Node is unable to deal with the cache correctly. So if you remove package log.json, next time you install something, yeah, fair enough, it may take a bit longer because it's gonna install everything related to that package from scratch, probably. I'm oversimplifying the process, but this time it will hopefully work. Yeah. So that's the first thing you should do. If it keeps failing, next thing I will invite you to do is to remove node modules. So node modules folder is where all your plugins and your dependencies are. Look, guys, I got a very simple React application, but look at how many components I have installed already. You see the dependencies tree is actually way more complicated than you may have thought about. So you got roughly 350 megs of JavaScript in the node modules folder. So if the npm installs keeps failing, you remove the node modules, and then you run npm install to start everything from scratch. Yeah, you see, guys, that nodemon was added to my package.json. And look, if you get a message plus and the name of the package, then everything is hopefully okay. Even if you get some warnings, Node is quite verbose, but if you get that message at the bottom plus and the name of the component, then you can assume everything went okay. So once you install the package, what else you need to do? Well, the only thing you need to do, and that's the beautifulness about nodemon, is to replace the word node with nodemon. That's it. Just add these 3 characters. Yeah? Node with nodemon. And then you start the task again. npm run the start backend. Yep. So when I press enter, look, now it's telling, look, watching. You see, watching, that's really positive. Yeah, it's watching. So nodemon is watching for changes. So every time you change that file or any related files, nodemon will restart the server. So the server has to be restarted every time you change something. The difference is you don't have to do it manually. So for instance, if I change hello Cody, pay attention, guys, to the bottom. Yeah. So if I change hello Monday to hello Cody, look, you see starting. Yeah. So you see that nodemon has restarted the server. So if I refresh, you get hello Cody. Yeah. So if I put some exclamation marks, pop, you see, it takes like 1 second to restart. So it's quite efficient. And now if I refresh, I got my changes reflected. Any questions? No? Alright, I told you before, guys, that Express was a middleware to set up routes in Node. So let's play with routes. Look, that's the message the user gets when he goes to or she goes to the route. But I don't really care about that because I'm sure the frontend, we'll talk about that later on, how the frontend can deal with this sort of routes. If I'm setting up a backend, it's mostly to declare some APIs, yeah, like you are doing in your team application. So let's create some APIs. Look, app.get. When I go to /cats, request response I want to return rest.send. Actually, let me tell instead of cats, animals. I want to create an API to get a list of animals. Yeah. So I want to get cat, dog, and spider. Yeah. So then, look, if I go to my web browser and I change the URL to /animals, you see, it returns, that's an array of strings. Technically speaking, there are some recommendations on how to create an API. Rather than call it /animals, try to do something like that. API/animals or REST/animals. Yeah? This is just for readability purposes. What happened, guys? Yeah. So REST is some sort of standard to communicate different counterparts. So that's the standard way of communicating two systems. So it doesn't. Yeah, probably. I mean, I've been using the word REST often. I know that some developers don't like it much. Some developers like to call it API because that's an API. It doesn't matter if it's REST or if it's not REST. That's a bit personal. Yeah, at least it's important to have some sort of namespace. Yeah, to prove that this is something that other counterparts can consume. Yeah. So let me give you an example. On the Codery app, there is a backend, right? So the backend, for instance, when you play a coding challenge, so there is an API called REST results. I just made it that up. That's for instance, yeah, backend. And then who is consuming that backend? Well, many clients. First of all, you got the front end. Yeah, when you go into your web browser, that's a front end. That's a client that consumes that API. But not just the front end, guys. There is the Android app, there is the iPhone app, and there is the iPad app. So all these things are front end, type of front end. So that's the web, that's a bunch of native applications, but all of them are consuming the same backend. Yeah? So that's REST. REST is the protocol. REST is the way the backend tells his friends, hey, do you want to get the list of results of a coding challenge? You need to call that endpoint, that URL, REST results. Okay? That's all right. Anything else, guys? Any questions? No? All right. You can create as many APIs, as many endpoints as you wish. So, for instance, list of cars. Yeah. Whatever. And then that's the same thing, right? If any client, could be my front end, could be someone else's front end, wants to get the list of cars, the only thing they need to do is to go to the appropriate URL, REST cars, and then you got the list of cars. What happens if my front end tries to get a list of cities, for instance? That's correct. It throws an error like, hey, I have no idea how to display a list of cities because our backend is not facilitating that public interface. Yeah. So remember, guys, this is the door, this is the gate between your front end and your backend. That's the communication channel. So whatever you put here will be available to your front end. Yeah. There is something quite interesting back to any of the endpoints, animals, for instance, as we'll see later on. With DevTools, we can track what's going on between the front end and the backend. So if you open DevTools, inspect, and now you go to the network tab and you refresh, you see the network tab is showing the traffic, the communication between the front end and the backend. And you can see that there is a single request, that's the one we are manually triggering. Yeah, and then if you click on it, it will show you, let me zoom it in a bit. It will show you some details. So that's the endpoint, localhost 3000 REST animals, status code 200. That means it's okay, everything went well. You got a lot of metadata, cookies, whatever, yeah. But then if you go to preview, it will show you, look, that's interesting, right? That's an array of data. That's an array of whatever this guy wants to display. Of course, here we're talking about an array of strings, but in reality, I mean, we could talk about an array of, can we talk, guys, about an array of objects? What do you think? Of course we can, right? List of cities, so name, Rome, population, whatever. Yeah, you can, of course, you can, you know, add more complexity to your API. You can do something like that. So now, if I want to check the list of cities, you got the same result. And if you check the network tab, you see that's an array of objects. So I can inspect the details of each object returned by my backend. Questions? No, I mean, that's just the basic setup of the backend. As you can see, I am manually typing the endpoint on the web browser. That's not what we want to do eventually. Yeah, eventually we want to trigger that endpoint from our frontend. Yeah, so we're going to create a component in React somewhere, and that component will trigger a request to the backend. And then once it gets the data from the backend, it will display the results using map or whatever. And that's actually what you are doing as part of your team app and also as part of conflicts. Yeah. But I would like to talk about that later on, this afternoon, guys, at 12:15, I think it is. Yeah. So this afternoon, I'm gonna take as an input that backend. Yeah. And I'm gonna integrate with it in a real React application. So for instance, I'm gonna create a user interface to display the list of animals, or a list of cars, or a list of cities. Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do this afternoon. Anything else, guys? No. All right. So I wanna leave it here because that's all I wanted to do regarding the backend. And yep. So thank you very much, guys, and I will see you later on. Cheers, guys.